Welcome to Fox and Friends on this Sunday morning, and we begin with a Fox News alert as the world reacts to the U.S. and its allies for striking Syria. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley is standing strong on that decision. It states is locked and loaded. When our president draws a red line, our president enforces the red line. We call on Russia to take a hard look at the company it keeps and live up to its responsibilities as a permanent member of the Council.
This as the United Nations turns down Russia's proposal to condemn the U.S. and allies for the airstrikes.
That's right, the missile launch targeting 3 chemical weapon sites in Syria, punishing the Assad regime for the chemical weapons attack on its own people. Here to react this morning, we're going to bring in Heather Nauert, Acting Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs. Heather, good morning.
Morning, Heather.
Thanks for being here. First of all, the latest message from the State Department on these strikes in Syria.
Well, Syria and Russia can become responsible members of society. Syria can first and foremost avoid further action on the part of the U.S. and its allies by declaring and getting rid of its stockpiles of chemical weapons. We have watched and seen for far too long as Bashar al-Assad has continued to use chemical weapons on his own people. 500,000 now have been killed since this war started.
Heather, the previous administration said 100% that they'd gotten rid of it, that the chemicals were out, that Russia had helped them do so.
Well,
did that never happen, or did they lie
Russia
about
was
it?
supposed to help them do that. Russia and Syria, by the way, along with 192 other countries, are signatories to the Chemical Weapons Convention. That means that countries are not supposed to possess chemical weapons because obviously we can see the deadly results when those weapons are used against people. So Russia and Syria can stop using those. Russia can stop backing Bashar al-Assad. That needs to happen now in order to avoid further action, and they need to stop attacking their own people in Syria.
Heather, what is your take then on Russia's response? Clearly, the Syrian regime got the message loud and clear in the form of 105 missiles, but what is your take on whether the Russians are going to get in line now?
Well, Russia needs to do that. This administration has been holding Russia to account from day one. We have had many rounds of sanctions on Russia for its meddling in the U.S. elections, for what it's done in Ukraine and other countries around the world. Also, the United States has imposed sanctions upon Russian companies that have provided helicopters and other material to the Syrian regime. Without Russia's backing, Syria would not be able to kill its innocent civilians. Russia is responsible for this, and that's why we've tried all the diplomatic options. There are still more diplomatic options ahead of us that we can employ through Ambassador Haley at the United Nations, but also through the European Union and getting more allies on board with this. Our Acting Secretary of State has spent a lot of time on the phone working with our allies and partners around the world, and they agree with us. Many other countries agree with us that this has to stop now.
Yeah, the president made that clear in his speech to the nation on Friday night, directly to Russia. This is a moment where you need to make that decision. As you know, the president likes communicating oftentimes through Twitter, as he has about what's going on in Syria. He tweeted earlier in the week and yesterday in response to the airstrikes. And part of the tweet that's been getting hammered by many in the media when he ended it saying, "Mission accomplished." Your reaction to all that?
Yeah, look, saying that is an acknowledgement that the strikes worked. Not a single loss of American or allied life. Taking out 3 facilities that not only hosted but tested these chemical weapons, that in and of itself is a success. Bringing together our allies and then talking to many of our other counterparts around the world, including Turkey, China, and others, is an acknowledgement of the success right now of this. There could be more to come if Syria doesn't get in the line, if it doesn't stop killing its own people, and if it doesn't get rid of its chemical weapons.
Heather, time and time again, we heard the administration yesterday say the policy is not regime change. They're not looking to topple Assad. At the same time, this morning, you're calling on the Russians to stop supporting Assad. What is then the policy in that region to bring this violence to an end that serves American interests, which is President ran on America first?
Certainly, and let's remember why the United States and its coalition partners, backed by 73 countries and entities, by the way, is in Syria. Syria. We are all together in Syria for the sole defeat of ISIS. But when you see a monster attacking his own people, it is incumbent upon the United States to act. So that is why we did this. Now, in terms of solving the entire problem in Syria, how do we do that? The United States and many other countries believe in the Geneva process. That means that it's backed by a gentleman called Stefan de Mistura, and that means a political solution eventually for Syria. It's a long way off, but eventually we believe that Syria can rebuild itself and that the Syrian people have the right to decide who they want to lead their country. We're not calling for regime change. We believe that Syrians need to make that choice. It's hard to imagine that Syrians would want to choose Bashar al-Assad, but that's the overall process, the Geneva process,
Well,
and that's something that we believe in.
It seems like the administration is all on the same page when it comes to the mission and the airstrikes in Syria, but you listen to members of Congress, and they seem to be all over the map. I want to just give you a couple examples. This is Chuck Schumer, who says, appropriate, but be careful. Lindsey Graham says, I fear this strike will be seen as a weak military response. Justin Amash says, unconstitutional, illegal, and reckless. And finally, Representative Thomas Massey from Kentucky says, I haven't read France's or Britain's constitution, but I've read ours, and nowhere in it is it presidential authority to strike Syria. So your response just to the mixed reactions.
A few words about that. Article 2 of the Constitution, the president has the ability, the authority, and the right to defend American interests, and that's exactly what we were doing, and we were backed by our allies as well. I mean, that has been clear all along.
Heather, the message that was sent was that President Trump is not going to tolerate bullies, and we have seen that under the Obama administration's failure to bring Syria under wraps, it has emboldened North Korea, China, others. What is the message, and how does this impact players like North Korea?
Well, I think this is a great example of the world acting together to say, you know what, there's this thing called the Chemical Weapons Convention, and with the 192 signatories, countries better start complying with that. That is something that's become very clear to countries around the world. We saw how North Korea used chemical weapons to kill Kim Jong-un's half-brother. Not that long ago, the United States found them in defiance of that, North Korea, that is. And so I think that you see the world coming together on that. And of course, not long ago, we saw that Russia had used chemical weapons on our ally, on the British, through poisoning of the gentleman and his daughter. So this is something that's really come to the forefront again, and we hope that other countries are watching. We think they're watching.
I mean, Heather, you think about your job every single day and the challenges that we face internationally, whether it is North Korea, whether it is trying to denuclearize Iran, whether it is trying to find a solution in Syria. In the work you do every day, what is the number one issue you think that keeps the administration up at night? What scares them the most?
I think you see these rogue actors continuing to create destabilization throughout the world. And some of the chief parties among them include Russia, also Iran. We haven't talked about Iran yet today. You see Iran's backing of Hezbollah and other fighter groups in Syria causing further problems for the Syrian people. You see Iran involved every single day in Yemen, where people are suffering there, women and children, so badly. And it's an issue that we don't talk about enough in the world community. It's something that the United States has sent a lot of humanitarian aid to the people of Yemen as a result. So we see Iran as a destabilizing factor, and that's one of the things that this administration has chosen to do. Other administrations failed to do this in the past. Look at Iran through the totality of its bad actions around the world, and we see that clear every single day in Syria, what they are doing, and the misery they're causing.
And potentially a change in our policy toward the Iranian deal with another deadline coming up. I'm very interested to see but what is your message, Heather, this morning to supporters of the president who say we elected him for his America First foreign policy that would mean less involvement in the Middle East, yet they see these strikes and entanglement? How do you balance that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. Look, this is America first, keeping America safe, but America is not safe when there's destabilization across the world. So when you see someone like Bashar al-Assad acting, there are things that we have to do about this as the United States of America. Not only is this the morally right thing, and not only does the United States and her allies have a responsibility to lead, that's what America does best, but this ultimately keeps America safe as well.
Heather, what does it say, by the way, you keep mentioning our allies, well. This was Prime Minister Theresa May's first such action. She did it without the approval of Parliament. Emmanuel Macron standing with Trump. What does that say? What is the message there?
You know, it's funny because some people around the world say that the United States has lost its allies, that the United States is not taking a leadership position. This shows the exact opposite of that. We can have disagreements with our closest allies, the UK and France, about other matters, but when it comes down to it, we all stand together. You saw that in our actions in the United Kingdom. You saw that when the United States kicked out 60 spies from Russia here in the United States. Abby, your dad knows that far too well, and the sacrifices that our people have made at our embassy and posts in Russia as well. The United States stands behind our allies, and that is something that's very clear.
All right, a lot on your plate, Heather. It was great having you on this morning.
Thank you, Heather.
And great to see you.
Thank you.